Yeah, so while I was in town, since I was here for a couple of days, I wanted to be able to take the time and us actually be in person together rather than doing Zoom. So typically our team has a Tuesday Zoom meeting. Most of you guys are on that, others of you are not, and that's just mainly because it's kind of irrelevant for you to be on that meeting. But since I was here, I just decided I was like, I really want us to be able to get together. And one of the things that the Lord has really been taking me to in this season has really been actually taking me back. And that's actually pretty unusual for me because if you know me well, I live like in the future at all times. Like I have a hard time being present, and I definitely don't really worry about the past. And so it's actually interesting. The last 6 months has been a very retrospective season for me and our whole family. It's just been a season of kind of looking back at what the Lord has been doing. But really, I would say the last couple of weeks, as we've been in New England, we've had sort of a Salem moment where there's just been a divine just removal of us from our comfortable environment, what we're used to, what we're used to. And in that place of being pulled out, the Lord has just been speaking some very specific things to us, and it's been really, really special. What we're going to do today is we are actually going to talk about the history of Take the City, which I'm excited. And ultimately, if I can get my computer to, there we go. I don't know why it does that. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to walk through the story of what God has done with Take the City. And ultimately, this idea is the Lord's idea. That's the first thing I just want to say. It wasn't really my idea. And another thing is it wasn't really something I personally had this great ambition to do one day. It wasn't like I had this desire, like one day I'm going to start, this ministry, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And hey, Bella. And so basically, I want to share, some of that story and kind of update you guys on kind of how it came together. But the reality of what God has done is, one, He has used me and my family to be a part of what He's doing with Take the City, but it has in no way been exclusively a journey that I've been on or my family. But it's been really a journey that I would say hundreds of people have been on over the last 8 years. And those hundreds of people represent our board of directors. They represent the first group of team leaders that were a part of Take the City. Represent the intercessors that were a part of our Friday night gatherings. It represents the first donors that started giving. It represents just all of our team members that we've had throughout the years. It just represents all those people. And so it's incredible how God in His sovereignty has used such an eclectic group of people over 8 years to do what He's done through Take the City. And it's pretty extraordinary if you guys know this story. And so if you don't know the story, it's kind of like, yeah, it's Take the City, that this is what it is. But if you understand the supernatural story that brought us to today, it's really exciting for me, because as I reflect on how, a large percentage of what we've done and what we've seen has not happened where we had a great strategic plan and a ton of money. It's been miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle, and for years we've lived as a ministry with a nose-diving budget where our money goes like this every year, and supernaturally God pays the bills every single year. And I'm not talking just $1,000. I'm saying like sometimes $20,000, $30,000 we're landsliding down, and God supernaturally pays the bills. And just, man, His provision is just so overwhelming. It's crazy how much God wants this to happen, and how much it's in His heart. And so one of the things that was important about the people of Israel that God explicitly told them to do was to build altars. And not only the people of Israel, but even the patriarchs, they built altars. And those altars served as a reminder of encounters that they had with the Lord, and specific words maybe that the Lord had given them, or moments where their life was forever changed. And they built those altars not only for them, but they actually built those altars with future generations in mind. And so part of the the purpose of what I want to do today, and we'll continue to probably dive into this over the coming months, is I want to sort of bring you guys back to some of the altars that the Lord has built with us, and point at those altars and say, we built this altar to remember this, and this is what happened, and this is the supernatural testimony. And because as we reflect on those things, it reminds us where we come from, but also it reminds us of God's supernatural faithfulness as he directs us to do even greater things. And so as the Lord starts to breathe fresh vision in our lives and says, you're going to go do this, or you're going to do that, or I'm going to give you this vision, one of the most just powerful things we can do when we're looking at maybe vision for the future is actually looking at the past, revisiting those altars and saying, wow, Lord, you were faithful here. Wow, Lord, you were faithful here. Wow, Lord, you were faithful here. And remember, they put all the rocks in the River Jordan to remember how, when the priests, they just started walking out with the Ark of the Covenant, and the Jordan River just stopped flowing, and they walked through on dry land into the Promised Land. I mean, that's supernatural. Well, they built a giant altar of these rocks, and those rocks, it explicitly says, this serves as a reminder to future generations of this is what the Lord has done. And so as we look back in the past of Take the City, I want us to be stirred with faith and one, just filled with a heart of thanksgiving of wow, look at what God has done. But also for you guys with Take the City, and even for your personal lives and personal dreams and ambitions, I really believe that even this is a seed of faith that if you want to receive it right now, you can receive an impartation of faith as I tell the story. Because really it's a journey of faith that we've been on, not a journey of knowing what we're doing, not a journey of education. I didn't have an education to learn how to do this. I didn't. Anyways, it's not. You're going to see the story has nothing to do with any way that I was prepared. It just has to do with ultimately God gave me a gift of faith and walking in that gift of faith. And so as we see the story, I want you guys to have an open heart to receive a gift of faith, that you would even walk in greater faith and take risks with the Lord. So this is actually our very first Take the City that happened in 2013. The Take the City outreach was started, we started planning it in early 2013. And the reason that we started planning this outreach is because I worked for Teen Challenge. I moved here in January, February of 2013, took a job at the corporate office. That's where I met Linda and so many other awesome people. But I took a job there, and basically I was putting together notebooks. That was my job all day. I was just kind of an administrative helper in this office area. And Carissa, my boss, she knew that I had a passion for evangelism, and I was flowing in the gifts of the Spirit. I was just a really zealous kind of charismatic person, right? So she's like, hey, we're doing a conference in a couple months, and we're going to have 150 leaders from around the region, and they're going to come together, and we want to revisit sort of the original purpose of Teen Challenge, or one of the original things that really helped found Teen Challenge, and that was evangelism. That's what David Wilkerson did. And so we're gonna impart that to our leaders by doing an outreach at this upcoming conference. And she's like, I just want you to figure it out. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? And she's like, just figure it out. And so it was totally no plan, but just do an outreach. You have 150 people, figure it out. And I was like, okay. So my first 3 months living in Columbus, Georgia, I actually spent that time preparing for this first outreach. And at that point, I was still Googling or looking in a GPS, how do I get to Walmart? How do I go to Publix? How do I get back home? I didn't know the city, but then I started planning this large outreach. And basically in April of that year, we ended up launching our Take the City outreach with Teen Challenge. And basically at the conference, we mobilized 150 people to 15 different locations in teams of 10. And we planned 15 simultaneous block parties and outreaches that went all over Phoenix City and Columbus, okay? the reason that we ended up calling it Take the City is because my first few months I was at a Bible study and we were studying through the book of Joshua. And I started to really see God's heart ultimately for his people to possess the land. And even I started to see God's very aggressive nature in establishing his kingdom and his dominion over land and over peoples, and how like God is he's not this like very passive, apologetic, sensitive guy up in heaven that we call God. No, he's God, and he has a kingdom, and he wants to establish his kingdom and his rule and his reign on the earth. And anyways, God just started to really highlight, not that that's all that he is, but highlight the aggressive posture and heart of God in the establishment of his kingdom in the earth. And ultimately, the way, the New Testament perspective of how God establishes his kingdom in the earth is different than how Joshua did it, but it's no less aggressive in posture, and God is not any less passionate about establishing his kingdom in the earth. It's just the way he does it is different, and it's through the proclamation of the gospel. It's through healing. It's through deliverance, casting out demons. It's through love. It's through provision. It's through, just bringing God's kingdom into areas. And so I was actually driving down 2nd Avenue one day, and I was headed into the downtown area, and the bridge that goes over the train tracks, as you're headed into town, I was driving over the bridge, started to see the city, and the Lord just spoke the words, "Take the city" to me. I never had that thought before. I never, anyways, it wasn't like I was planning something. I just take the city. And so then my next thought was, that'd be a cool name for our outreach in a couple of months. So I go back to the office. I'm like, Krista, we're going to call the outreach at the conference Take the City. And she's like, wow, cool. Okay, good. And so anyways, I end up connecting with a local pastor here in town. His name's Pastor Chris. And he was at North Highland, and he ends up being a major helper for me planning the outreach. He just really got behind me and helped me a ton. I also ended up connecting for the first time with Pastor Paul Thomas. When I had lunch with Pastor Paul Thomas, who's my pastor still this day, he said the Lord spoke to me over the past couple of years that there was going to be a young man that would come to the city. And when I met him, I was supposed to help him. First time ever meeting him, having lunch, he says, "I think you're that person." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "We're going to give you $1,000 for your first outreach." And I was like, I never even thought we needed money to do outreach. Like, why do we need money? But we actually ended up spending not only $1,000, but more, because God just increased the vision of like what we could do on that Saturday. And we ended up showing up. We had a beautiful day. It was, of course, a little hot on April, but we went to many different locations around the city. We saw many people saved. It was just an incredible outreach. Came back, heard all the testimonies, and anyways, it's done. It took me 3 months to plan the very first Take the City, and we get done. And Pastor Chris, he comes over to me afterwards. He says, "Bro, that was awesome." I was like, "Yeah." He said, "We should do that again." And I was like, "You should do that again." Like, I do not want to do that again. And it's so fun. Like, I think about what I said to him over and over and over again, because it's funny. Like, I've done that again for 8 years now. Like, it's literally what I do now. It's just so funny how God works. So anyways, let's go to the next slide. So the next week, Chris and I started talking, and we decided, let's do another one. And so we did our very first, what I would call the first real Take the City, which was a citywide prayer and worship gathering with a citywide outreach gathering. And that happened May 24th and 25th of 2013. Here's the first flyer for our Take the City. And you could see the logo at the top is CV Hop, which is the name of the house of prayer at the time that I was involved with when I first moved to the city. That was the main ministry I was connected with, was CV Hop. I would do worship sets with them, and we partner with them. And so really, from the beginning, there was a union between the prayer movement and this evangelistic missions thing that made Take the City. And the glue that held it all together was the local churches, right? So because really the idea was different denominations and churches coming together, but around prayer and around evangelism. Like, we can agree on these things. We need to pray for our city, right? And we need to go out and share the gospel. And so we had our very first gathering. Go to the next slide. We ended up hosting the first gathering here in the basement of Teen Challenge. So this is the basement area of Teen Challenge. We had maybe 35 or 40 people come to the first outreach, and you can actually see the guy that's talking that kind of is towards the front on the right side. That's Pastor Chris. And anyways, we just pulled together a team of outreach leaders. One of our very first outreach leaders was Miss Debbie Moreland, who's still involved with the ministry to this day. But God just supernaturally started connecting us with incredible evangelists in the city that were drawn to this idea of let's go do outreach. Like, the first people that got really excited were the evangelists in the city. So we pulled them together, and then we invited local churches to come to get involved. And so this is the first outreach we did. This is in July of that year. This would be our second or third outreach. This is actually under the bridge that goes over 2nd Avenue that I was mentioning. Oh, let's go to the next one. Sorry. So this is actually under the bridge. We really spent tons of time, like the first year, I'd say, focusing on ministering to the homeless around the city. We would probably half our outreaches were to homeless camps that were in different wooded areas, and we would take food to them and share the gospel. And what's interesting is there's a couple here on the left side, and so I just noticed this, but this couple, I'll come back to them in a little bit, but they play a pivotal role in our story 2 or 3 years later, and I don't even remember that they were there. I just saw this picture. I was like, that's them. But they actually play a huge role in what God is going to do in the ministry in 2 or 3 years. But anyways, we just began to go out and share the gospel. Go to the next slide. We had a flood. There was a flooding that happened in the basement, so we moved upstairs into the little conference room at Teen Challenge, and Teen Challenge graciously just let me use, their space and stuff on the weekends. And so, like, Mason, you can remember, meeting in that upstairs little conference room, and the conference room was made for 25 people, and we would sometimes put 80 people in this like little conference room, stuff them in, and we would go out and share the gospel. Go to the next slide. You can see Pastor Chris was still involved with us. He was a big part of it. In the previous slide, if you go back, you can see Charlene Hughes. She was the leader of Chattahoochee Valley House of Prayer, and she was a key partner, again, because we were focusing on worship, prayer, and the proclamation of the gospel. Go to the next slide. This is one of our outreaches in the fall. I don't know if you can see a beautiful young lady on the right side, but that happens to be my wife before she was my wife. And anyways, a bunch of those people in that picture we're still friends with today. But the outreaches, we just continue to go out and share the gospel, and Take the City began to grow in momentum. The next slide is actually from 2014 in February. You guys will recognize Lynn and Ed Alderson in the bottom right. You'll probably see that. But I just had met them here. So in November, December of 2013, we had started Take the City for about 6 months. I got back together with the planning team, the planning committee that was helping me plan the outreach for next year's conference for Teen Challenge. Remember, Take the City was an afternoon in the middle of a conference that Teen Challenge was hosting. Well, that conference was coming back up in April of the next year, and I was in the planning committee, and they said, Andrew, can you do another outreach? I said, sure. And they said, well, here's your group that's going to help you plan it. And I was like, okay, cool. And none of these people lived in town. So I knew what that meant is I'm going to plan it, and they're just going to give me ideas. So we get on a phone call, and our very first phone call, the meeting's going good. I show them all the Google documents and planning and strategy that we used for the first outreach that helped us meticulously mobilize 150 people to 15 locations. reaching all those people. So I showed them all the documents. I said, guys, we got it all laid out. We'll just do the same thing we did last year. And everyone was like, yeah, except one person on the call was like, hey, I have an idea. And I was like, oh, great. And the person said, what if we like got a big, like, I don't know, like rent like a big place. And then instead of doing a bunch of outreaches, we did one big outreach and like had the gospel and like music and like bouncy houses or whatever. And I was like, yeah. In my head, I'm like, shut your mouth, like stop this, because I knew it was gonna fall on me. Like I don't want to do that. So I end up just writing the idea down, just kind of being polite, sure, we'll look into it. And they're like, okay. And I said, I'll look into how much it costs to rent the amphitheater downtown, thinking that it would be so expensive that obviously, because we don't have a budget, that obviously we can't do that, and then therefore justify the fact that we can't do this event. So I procrastinate, and a month later we had another team call, and the day before the team call or so, I remember, I've got this call, and I told them I was going to call the amphitheater, so I just need to call them real quick, get it over with, find out how expensive it is, and then I can just tell them we can't do it tomorrow. So I make this phone call, and the lady picks up the phone, and I said, hey, blah, 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 this is what I'm doing. We're thinking about this specific date in April, and, I know it's probably too expensive and, whatever, but could you just tell me how much it costs? And she tells me, it's like thousands of dollars, and I was like, oh, too bad. Thousands of dollars, I guess, it's a sign we're not supposed to do it. So she tells me that, and then she says, well, and the date that you've requested, it's already reserved. I was like, oh, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Like, yes. So then she says, but I think you should call them. And I was like, really? And she says, they're a church group or something, and I think they want to do something similar to what you're talking about. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was thinking, I was like, well, maybe they're doing this big thing, and then instead of me having to plan it, I could just kind of help them, anyway, so I was like curious. So I call this lady over the phone, and I said, hey, this is who I am, and this is the organization that I'm with. And I started to lay out the plan of like what the group had proposed that we would do at the amphitheater, kind of laid out the whole thing. So I get done laying out the whole plan, and I stop, and I like wait for her to respond, and there's like no response for a couple seconds, which is like pretty long. And I'm like, if you don't know someone, you're like, okay, what's going on? And then I start hearing her, and she's crying. And she's like, everything that you just said is what we're trying to do on that same day. And she said, I have a sheet of paper in front of me that we've been planning. And she said, it's as if you just read it to me. And I was like, whoa, okay. And so I said, well, we should meet together. And so we ended up meeting together a few weeks later, and it was a group of people. They had never planned an event before, but they had a vision, and our visions aligned. And so we got together, and that was in January of 2014. And again, the event was in April, and the idea was that in April that we would rent the amphitheater, blah, 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 do this big event. And what ended up happening is, the whole meeting, I was like, this is impossible, because I finally realized when I met with them, no one had any event planning experience. No one had any money. Like, there was no plan. Like, there wasn't, like, it was just an idea, and they were like a pencil mark in the calendar for the Phoenix City Amphitheater. Like, that's it. They hadn't even placed a down payment on the amphitheater. I was like, oh no. I was like, oh, like, I don't know if this is what we're supposed to do. But then we prayed at the end of our time together, and it was one of the most powerful moments where, like, the presence of God, like, it was just like he visited us in our prayer, and it was so tangible and so real. Just a little prayer at the end that I knew. I felt like it was the Lord saying, "You're going to do this," and I was like, "Whoa, okay." And it moved me so much. I said, "Let's meet again." So we ended up meeting again, and we started calling leaders together from around the city. And this picture is one of the first informational meetings that we had about revival in the river. You can actually see Mason and Megan Stewart if you look closely right there. So I don't know if you guys remember that, but anyways, we just started calling whoever we knew, and we had met. Yeah, yeah. Mason had hair at the time, so it's evident and proof. But we started calling leaders that we knew and pulled them together, and we started casting this vision, guys, and just the testimony of like what the Lord did. You can go to the next slide. Over the coming 2 months, there was like a momentum and an acceleration that was way beyond us. Like again, I had just moved to Columbus a year before this. I had like 5 friends. I had 2 connections. Like I didn't know anyone at this time. Like it wasn't like I had built years of relationships. It wasn't like I was from Columbus. But then when the Lord said, Revival on the River, let's do this, it was as if just the wind of God started breathing on it. And we started hosting these prayer meetings and preparation times, getting ready for Revival on the River. And then you can go to the next one. We hosted our first Revival on the River in April of 2014. So all of this happened. It went from 150 people at a Teen Challenge event that I didn't want to do the next one. And within 12 months, it accelerated, and we ended up hosting a citywide gathering with over 2,500 people that attended. Again, like I didn't know anyone in Columbus. Like it wasn't like even a lot of the people that you see right here playing music, I had just met them. Like this was like all these relationships were new and being formed. And one of the awesome things that the Lord did in the process of this is God gave us a vision to try to feed everyone in attendance at Revival on the River. So I emailed Chick-fil-A at the Phoenix City store, and they responded and said no. Because I emailed them and said, would you guys please provide 3,000 free meals for an event that we're doing in April? And they said, no. And then randomly, 2 months after I submitted the request, I got it denied right before Revival on the River, like 30 days before the event. We have no idea how we're going to feed everyone. Todd, the guy that runs that Chick-fil-A, calls me out of the blue. He says, Andrew, tell me again about what you're doing next month. And I was like, I told him. He said, well, you know what I'm going to do? He said, I'm going to email Dan Cathy about what you're wanting to do. And if he says that the corporate office will pay for it, we'll do it. I said, you're going to email Dan Cathy about what we're doing in Columbus, Georgia. You have no idea even what we're doing, really. Like, you don't even know us. Like, Todd didn't even know me. We don't have, like, a reputation. We don't have, anyways. So he emails Dan Cathy, and we find out, like, a week later that Dan Cathy approved the 3,000 free meals, which included a cookie, like a full meal, drink. I mean, it was like 3,000 drinks. Like, it was a huge donation. And so our very first Revival on the River was fully paid for. God provided all the money. We met 4 months before the event happened. We had $0. We had zero. None of us had ever planned an event before, like no event planning experience. And God just supernaturally did it. One of the things that He provided was some key helpers in those last 2 months. That really helped us. And thank God for them. But there was a team that sort of came around, and we were able to pull it off. If you guys look at the next slide, you guys see Chris and Earl. They've been a mainstay of Take the City for years. We love them. We ended up moving Take the City from the Teen Challenge building to a new location. And this is where The Door, which was a young adult ministry at the time, was gathering. And actually what you see in the picture here is where, if you know Columbus well, it's where My Belange is now. So where My Belange is used to look like this, okay? And it was just a big empty room. And we met in that space for a long time, probably a year or two. And Take the City would also gather there. And so once Take the City started meeting here, the gatherings went from maybe 30 or 40 people doing outreach to at least 100 people would attend these monthly events where we would go do outreach and evangelism. And we'd have 20 churches represented, like 2 or 3 youth groups. And anyways, you can see this is the summer of 2014. We also had amazing volunteers that loved to come out with us. And you guys can see Mason. I just wanted to throw Mason out there because actually I found a lot of pictures of Mason. It's really funny. But we would not only do evangelism, but we would even go do yard projects for people. We would just do whatever we could, to reach out and share the gospel. We really started diversifying and even letting our team leaders come up with innovative ideas on how they wanted to reach their communities. You can go to the next slide. We continued hosting our worship nights on Friday nights. This is one of our worship nights. We would host on Friday night an event. We called it Release the River, and that was worship and prayer. We still do that to this day, but we now call it Harvest Nights, and that's on Thursdays. But we've been hosting these worship and prayer gatherings for years, and we did it in partnership with a House of Prayer, CV Hop at the time. You can go to the next slide. We had a lot of different outreach teams that would go out. These are some of our one of our outreach teams at the end of the year. This is actually in December of 2014. And anyways, you could just see the teams there getting ready to go out. If you look at the next picture, this is January of 2015. Now, January of 2015. Take the City, as we had known it, was at a peak. So we had more people involved with Take the City than ever before. We had more momentum. We were building more relationships. I mean, it was like the room was packed on Saturdays, right? I mean, like Mason, you used to come. I mean, it would just be like, there was just excitement and a buzz around this new thing, Take the City. And it was awesome. And you could see them praying for each other. We also had just a very like openness to the things of the Holy Spirit, which for some people, they were really longing for that and would find it just coming to these Take the City gatherings where we saw, miracles, where we'd pray for people and they'd get baptized in the Holy Spirit. And just anyways, awesome things were happening. But around this time in January of 2015, I was actually in my heart leaving Columbus. So a couple months before this happened, my boss's boss had come to me from Teen Challenge and said, "Hey, we have a donor, we have a building, and we're going to launch an outreach, a whole new prototype for Teen Challenge in Daytona Beach, Florida, and we want you to pioneer this in Florida." And so I had been flying back and forth to Florida, having meetings with donors. And anyways, I was getting ready to go to Florida. And so in my heart, in January of 2015, if you look at this group right here, a lot of these were our leaders. And specifically a group of them I had already been talking with that I'm going to leave this to you guys. And this is this is a movement. It's not a ministry. We don't have a budget. We don't need a budget. We'll never need a budget. You guys just run with this, just do this. And again, Take the City, what we were doing, I had another full-time job. I had a whole nother job. And then in addition to that, I was running these outreaches once a month. And so it was really just a side thing that we would do. We would host these gatherings and it was fun and we were reaching people. But in my heart, I started to sense change was coming. But what I didn't know is the change was way different than I anticipated. And anyways, you can go to the next slide. So this is a group of our participants in January of 2015. So February of 2015, I heard the Lord speak to me very, very clearly. And, it's not often that I just sense God speak to me, but it was like a clear word of the Lord. And he said, stop having meetings, stop making plans for 1 month. And I want you to fast and pray, and I want you to seek me about your direction for the future. Because I was having all these meetings, I was making plans, I was shifting things here locally to get ready to move. I was checked out of Columbus. In my mind, I was already somewhere else because I was moving. And so I was already figuring out what my next phase of life was going to look like. And the Lord said, nope, stop. And I'm thinking I'm moving on, but really he has something else in mind. And in the month of February 2015, the Lord speaks to me very specifically, and it was the most terrifying thing he could have said to me. He said, okay, first of all, you're not going to Florida, okay? Second of all, you're not going anywhere. And third of all, you're going to quit your job. And I was like, okay, that is not what I thought I was going to hear during this month of like prayer and fasting. I thought it was like clarity about Florida, breakthrough financially, new leaders for I had this idea in my mind, and then I go in the prayer closet for a month. I'm telling you guys, like I cut off all outside activity for a month. I went to work and I would just seek the Lord. And in that month, the Lord just, so clearly said, quit your job. And I was like, what? Okay, all right. And so anyways, what ends up happening, we can go to the next slide, but what ends up happening is in May of that year, a couple months later, or April of that year, I went to my boss's boss, checked back in with them about, kind of the plans that were being made. And I just said, hey, I've prayed about this and I really feel like I'm not supposed to go to Florida. And he was like, okay. And I said, and I feel like I'm supposed to resign. And he was like, and do what? And I was like, I'm not really sure, but like I feel like I'm supposed to like step away. And so I had a pretty big project that I was doing for a teen challenge that took me about 6 months long. And so I agreed that I would finish the project and then quit at that point. And so in the summer of 2015 is when I resigned from Teen Challenge and left my job. I had, health insurance and a salary and all that fun stuff. And left just kind of the comfort of that. But what was awesome is Dr. Jerry Nance, the leader of Teen Challenge, he really supported me in my change and actually said, hey, with this idea that you have, you can use some of our offices here and we're going to help you. And we're going to give you some money every month to support you in this new ministry endeavor. So not only was he not like intimidated or angry that I was leaving his ministry, but he actually empowered and like supported me. And man, that was a big deal because sometimes in ministry, if you're leaving the church or you're leaving this, man, people can be really angry if they're the guy in charge and now you're not supporting what their dream is. It's like people can be really nasty. And so I stepped out in faith. And then at that point too, one of the interesting things that happened is I actually got full custody of my son, Landon, at the same month. So I had joint custody for 7 years, and then suddenly I got full custody. When I found out I got full custody, it was January of 2015. The next month, the Lord says, quit your job. So I'm like, what is happening? You're giving me my son, right? This whole new level of responsibility. I've never taken care of a child as a single parent before. And you're telling me to quit my job. Like, this is terrifying, right? But the Lord just began to like faithfully provide for us. And anyways, it just the stories of his provision in those early days is just unbelievable, like what the Lord did. We ended up moving to a couple different locations to take the city, but this is actually in September of 2015. We moved to the Hearst Drive location. And this is where we would meet and do outreach. And this is actually Teen Challenge off Hearst Drive. So there's a women's center here, and they had a large chapel that used to be a church a long time ago. And anyways, we would meet here, and this is where we would do Take the City. And so we would host Take the City here, and then also at the same time, we would host The Door on Sunday nights. And so The Door was a young adult ministry of Evangel Temple. And then what ended up happening is The Door ended up becoming a part of Take the City, which was this new ministry that we launched. So the first couple years that we launched Take the City, I was actually leading outreaches and prayer meetings, but also I was leading a Sunday night gathering that was mostly for like young adults, but lots of different people would come. And so we launched into kind of this whole new season at this location. We also had some awesome worship leaders that would come and lead us. Many of you guys may know there's a really famous guy who used to lead worship for us named Mike Marshall. And those were the days, He used to answer my phone calls back then, but not. But anyways, so we would have worship and prayer. This is Jason Villeros. He was our first ever employee and one of my greatest friends. And Jason was a real keystone in the first few years of launching Take the City. He was my right-hand guy. I mean, he was the administrative person. He was the He started training and equipping. He started kind of putting together different things. And this is our Thanksgiving outreach. It's the first one we ever did where we fed hundreds of families across the city and used food as a means to bring the gospel. This is a group, the group has changed throughout the years, but you can see some people that are still involved. Cindy Winkles, she's in the middle with a pink shirt. She leads worship in our house of prayer. She's still around. You could see Mike up front and just others. You could see Ellen's in the picture. But also many of these people have moved on and they live in other cities around the country. It's just fun, but we have friends all over that have been connected to the ministry. This is a picture of Ellen taking out groups. We would go to trailer parks, and again, like, we just always stayed consistent and focused about what God called us to do, and that was to unify and mobilize the church to see our city changed and revitalized, right? And so we'd bring different groups together from different denominations, and we would do the simple thing and just go out and share the gospel, and we just always saw so many amazing things. At the end of 2015. We had just started as a nonprofit, and we hosted our very first Take the City conference. And this was an exciting way for us to kind of let more people know about, hey, we're a ministry now, not just this event that happens once a month. And also as a way for us to raise some money, like get more monthly donors, and also just a way for us to equip and train our team members. And so we hosted Robbie Dawkins, who is just just someone who's made such a huge impact on us and our ministry. And he came in and did an equipping that weekend. How many of you guys were there? Were any of you guys there? Okay, cool. Yeah. But there was just such a, when Robbie came through, it just increased, it just did so much in our community. And it was just awesome to really see and to be equipped by Robbie at that conference. These are the outreach leaders on the next slide as of the end of 2015. So you guys can see these are some of the leaders that were taking teams out. Go to the next slide. This is a guy that we ended up leading to the Lord, and then Willie actually ended up getting connected with Eddie James and the Dream Life program, and ended up becoming a leader there at Dream Life. And just story after story of lives being changed as the church leaves the building and goes out and brings the gospel. Like, just so many stories of meeting people out and about, and then lives just getting radically touched by the gospel. Let's go to the next story. We had the next year in 2016 in February, we had just the by far the most notable miracle that we've ever experienced as a ministry. We had a guy, his name is Phelan Turnsplenny, and his family, they came from Lake City, Florida for a revival conference that was happening, and they heard about Take the City. So they left the revival and came to Take the City. And there was a guy that came in, Phelan came in, and he was deaf and mute. He couldn't speak, he couldn't hear. And I felt like at the end, we were supposed to pray for him, but I just ignored it, and we were busy and planning doing the outreach. And Jason, I look over at the end, and Jason's praying for Phelan. I was like, oh, good, Jason's going to pray for him. And there was some local pastors from around the city that were in there, it just right there, and just started praying, and nothing was happening. And then Jason kind of pauses, and then Jason starts to just rebuke a deaf and dumb spirit, very, very intensely, just starts commanding this deaf and dumb spirit to leave this guy that we don't even know. And I was like, whoa, this is getting intense. And then suddenly one of his ears, he starts tapping his ear, and he starts looking at his parents and trying to motion at them something was happening. And then Jason just kept praying. And anyways, both of his ears open, and he started to hear for the very first time. He had zero hearing his entire life, at least as an infant. I think maybe he had hearing for a few months, but he had never heard anything, and he started to hear for the first time. And then as they continued to pray, Phelan's mouth was open for the first time, and he started making noise and utterance. He had never made an utterance or a noise. He was completely mute, but God actually opened up his ability to speak, but he had no language, so he just grunted just grunted. He had no language. He had never heard anything or spoken. So it was just very elementary, like a little baby almost coming out of a like a 17-year-old's voice. But Phelan's miracle, that actually, when they went home, there was hundreds of people that ended up getting baptized in Lake City, Florida, after the miracle happened, because so many people knew Phelan growing up, and that it literally, like, revival broke out in Lake City, Florida. We were getting reports of hundreds of people being baptized in lakes. Just crazy, like, just good stuff happened as a result of that miracle. And I'll never forget, the next year, Phelan texted me on his birthday a picture of himself, and he, for his birthday, got a pair of headphones, and it was his first time ever receiving a pair of headphones for his birthday. And he was excited. He could listen to music, right? So we continued hosting the Revival on the River events. You guys can see the picture there. The Revival on the River just continued to be planned. God sent Catherine Server to help us, really put some glue to it all together, and so many others. You guys can see, God just really blessed that event. In 2016, we launched an internship program called Occupy. And that summer, our idea was, let's get youth and young adults to run with us for 2 months and just do training every day, do outreach. And it was kind of like our first ever attempt at doing like a little school. At the end of their internship, we took them up to DC. And this is them with the late Dick Simmons, who was an intercessor on Capitol Hill for 20 years or more, and was just a spiritual father to me. And so anyways, he got to pour into our interns, and he's just awesome. So that was our summer internship. This is 2016. This is a group working at our very first Project Lifehouse home, and that is the Bradley Circle Project Lifehouse home. So we ended up getting the Bradley Circle Project Lifehouse home donated in early that summer of 2016. And the way we got it donated is in March, April, we started planning an event later that year where we were going to bring Todd White to Columbus. And so we were going to rent like the big event center in town and get that event happening. And one of the things is we had to put a down payment to get the event going. And so that was $5,000. Well, at the time, Take the City's operational budget was $6,500 a month. Okay, so it was almost an entire month worth of basically paying everyone that we in faith mailed on a Monday, and that was in April, May of 2016. We mailed it, and on Friday, a guy that we had never met before came in and had a check for Take the City. He didn't even really know what we were doing. He just felt the Lord speak to him in a coffee shop, Fountain City Coffee Shop, and the Lord said, you need to give a donation to Take the City. And he said, how much? And the Lord said, $5,000. And then he looks on Google Maps, and he's literally on the same block as where Take the City was, our offices were. So he goes around the block, walks, meets Jason Villeros, gives him a check for $5,000. And before the other check had cleared, we already had $5,000 in our bank to do the event in October. That guy, his name's Larry, I wrote him a letter because I had no contact information but a P.O. box. We end up getting lunch at Iron Bank Coffee a month later, and I tell him this dream that we had that one day we were going to have houses all over the city, and we were going to move missionaries into communities to help really take our outreaches to a whole nother level where we're not just showing up every month, but we're like living incarnational, bringing the gospel day after day. And I tell him this idea, and he says, hey, I'm buying a house tomorrow. And he says, I'll give you that house if you're interested. And I didn't believe him. But the next month, we end up meeting, and he brings it up, and he says, hey, like, I told you I bought that house. Do you want it? And I was like, sure. So we drive over, and we see the Bradley Circle Project Lifehouse home for the first time. And anyways, we just started doing those projects. And so even still to this day, 5 years later, we're still working on Project Lifehouse homes. And we now have, as of today, we have four families that are living in these homes and ministering in these communities. And God is just breathing on that vision. In October of that year, we ended up hosting Power and Love. This was a major shift for our team, for our influence in not only in Columbus, but the whole southeastern region. And we had Todd White and Robbie Dawkins came back and just anyways, just had 3 days of It was incredible. Was anybody there at the Power and Low? Okay, cool. Yeah. So my parents, they started getting involved with Take the City. And what's awesome is my parents, after we got the first house donated, I actually went up to visit them in Atlanta, and I had just found out that we were getting 28 more houses donated to Take the City. Within a few months, God gave us Bradley Circle, and then 28 more houses we had by the end of the summer. So we went from this crazy idea written on a piece of paper that one day we were going to have missionary houses, probably in 5 or 10 years, and 6 months later we had almost 30 properties donated. Okay. And just to remind you guys, remember that one of the second or third picture I showed you guys of that outreach under the bridge? So there was a lady her name's Miss Karen. She's actually the one that summer donated 28 houses to us. Anyways, it's just crazy. So my mom and dad I ended up talking to them at the end of 2016 and just said, hey, just throwing this idea out there, just kind of joking. I said, I've got all these houses to renovate. You guys run a construction company. And what do you think? You should move to Columbus and just come help me. And they kind of laughed. And anyways, we hung out the rest of that night and went to bed. And the next morning, my dad follows me out as I'm going to the car to drive back to Columbus. And he says, hey, he said, were you serious last night? And I was like, about what? And he says, about us coming to Columbus. And I was like, yeah, yes, you should do that. He's like, we're interested. I was like, what? Because they were running a company in Atlanta. They had, anyways, 20-something years of history on the north side of Atlanta. That's home, right? To me, even at that time, I viewed North Atlanta as that's where home is, because that's where my parents were. That's where I grew up. And anyways, God spoke, and they ended up moving to Columbus and joining the ministry and helping us redo the houses. These are some of the kids from Bradley Circle. Trinity, which is on the left, she was 4 years old at the time, and many of you guys know some of the kids, Taraji, and anyways, they're all 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Tech is 17 now. But just, what's fun about this is these are some of the kids in Bradley Circle, and Ellen and I, we actually we looked for 7 or 8 months for a family to move into the Bradley Circle home, and we kept asking families, and then they would kind of agree and then change their minds. And we were like, what are we going to do? No one will move into this neighborhood. And at the time, Bradley Circle, over 50% of the houses were abandoned, and they were crack houses. There was 2 homeless camps within a rock's throw of my house. There was 2 or 3 drug houses in the neighborhood. It was a different neighborhood 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, Cindy can attest. So that neighborhood was very, very interesting. So we couldn't get anyone to move in, and Ellen and I were like, well, if no one else will go, we'll move in. And so we ended up leaving. We were living in the big house downtown, which is a huge house, and we ended up moving into Bradley Circle. And that has made such a big difference in us, just getting the time to be able to really invest ourselves and learn and grow. What does it mean to represent Jesus day in and day out as a neighbor, and not just as someone that's showing up in a neighborhood or going downtown giving prophetic words, or doing ministry in a church setting where I'm preaching, but no, what does it mean to represent Jesus when I am annoyed with my wife and we just fought about something, and I go outside and I'm watering the grass, and my neighbor comes over and they need something, and I know this is a divine appointment, and how do I take advantage of that with all that's going on inside of my day-to-day life? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Well, God just began to really shape us and mold us and change us through ministering to these kids. The next slide, these are our staff members at the end of 2016. You can see Jason, very handsome on the right side. Jason's actually having a baby in a couple months. Brian Shavery, he's on staff now at Cascade Hills. He's an incredible, just has a huge pastoral heart. And then you could see Catherine. Ian Allen, he was a part of our team for a while, and then he ended up spawning out in the Imminent Worship, which is what he's led. Now is an independent ministry. And then Jonathan Cronin, he came on and helped us start Redeem. and he finished Bible college and then came over and started Redeem with us. 2016, we did a really cool outreach. This is actually, these used to be neighbors in Bradley Circle, but we did an outreach where we delivered Christmas presents to families in need around the city. We showed up. We're actually still friends with this family to this day. Like this moment made such an impact. Like we still are connected with this family. And but we show up and we bring Christmas presents to my neighbors, and the mom just starts bawling. And she said that the night before, she went out and went Christmas shopping and bought several $100s worth of presents for her kids. And she didn't think she was going to get Christmas presents, but then last minute, her employer gave her like a $200 bonus or something. So she went and spent all that money on Christmas presents, put them in the back of her car, and the night before, someone broke in and took all the presents and stole them. So when we show up, we had tons of presents for her kids. She just loses it and starts weeping uncontrollably. She's like, "Oh, my presents got stolen. I didn't know what I was going to do." And we show up, and anyways, all of our kids ended up getting not only the presents we took, but we ended up going back and just finding more stuff for them because we realized, just God was going to supernaturally provide. And anyways, that's Amber Lawson and her family. And the next thing that I want to just close up with is we started a season of actually going to different cities in 2017. And there was a shift with Take the City where we started going from city to city and taking what we were doing here, and we started getting invitations. And so this is in Tennessee. You can go to the next slide. We went to South Carolina. That's Marielle. She's still a friend today. And we were doing trainings and equippings. The next slide is our team leaders in 2017. We hosted another conference in 2017 and had Chris Overstreet come, which was so fun. We ended up connecting with Awaken the Dawn in 2017, and we hosted the outreach tent, and that's where we got connected with Heidi Baker. And Iris Ministries was through Heidi was in our tent while we were there that weekend, and we were mobilizing hundreds of people across DC to share the gospel. Anyways, 2017 was like a catalytic year for Take the City to go national, where we started traveling all over the country. I was gone over half of the year, traveling, flying around the country, meeting with leaders, going different places. This is the team that went with us to Tent America. We squeezed way too many people in this little Airbnb, and a lot of people were really mad. So we learned a lot through mistakes, like traveling with groups and stuff. Like, anyways, a lot of learning lessons, but we made it, and no one killed each other. In 2017, another awesome thing that happened is we were donated this building that you guys are in. This is the room that we're in right now. This is what it used to look like. So the picture's being taken kind of from where Mason is, in that direction, okay? And so the first thing we did is we did a massive community-wide yard sale to raise money to start the renovations of this building. We were donated this building. And then we needed about $150,000 just to renovate the building, and we didn't have any of that money, okay? So the first thing we did is we hosted a yard sale, and then God just supernaturally started to, we could just leave the picture back at the building, but God started to supernaturally provide. And anyways, what ended up happening is another ministry from here in the U.S. ended up donating $110,000 to Take the City that gave us the finances to build everything, or most of what you guys see today. And so this building was renovated. The prayer room was built out, like tons of stuff. Like we had dreams of this building, but we honestly didn't really think it was possible because we didn't have the cash. And then the Lord started to provide, and we redid the building. So we can go a few more. This is Lisa Edie. She was our outreach director. She lived in the next house. She and her family lived in this house, and this is an outreach team helping out at Young Avenue. And we know Maya and Nacy. They now serve in that neighborhood. And so what's cool is there's been ministry going on in there since 2017, 2018. And then you guys have been there, and even before us, the house was used, for the kingdom as well. This is the sign going up at Take the City, doing the renovations. This is the Betzel's house being renovated, which they're actually moving out this week, and we have another family moving into their Project Lifehouse home. This is us traveling. We were in Texas, so Catherine got to go around to some events. This is a team at the end of at the beginning of 2018. One of the major things that happened is we brought Lynn Alderson on, and she has been a huge, huge help for Take the City. We hosted a conference in Tampa in 2018 with Sean Foyt. That was really, really fun. And actually at this event, at the end of the event, Ellen had just like the most dramatic and powerful encounter with the Holy Spirit she's ever had in her life after the event ended. We raised the money and started renovating the building. So I wanted you guys to be able to see this. This is kind of the construction process of where the coffee shop is today. We started hosting worship and prayer nights in this room in 2018, in the middle of that year. We went to Africa in 2018 and hosted our first international conference. So we had like 300 or 400 people come. We also did an event at a university. We went to Regent University. So you guys know Adam, who's leaving today, who was an intern here. So he attended this event in 2018, which led to him coming and doing an internship here. And just the other day, he said this event was like life transforming for him when we came in and we did an equipping with them to go and share the gospel. We hosted a Christmas party. I put this in because my Nana is singing. I just love it. You see her? I love her so much. 2019, we hosted our very first Reach School, a Saturday morning discipleship school that was like 4 months. It was like an intensive. They would come in on Saturdays. And what's awesome is some of the Reach School students that did this are now even like on our board. This was like a huge investment that we made. And Chris Cloud and my dad were the main kind of teachers that helped us launch the school. We also hosted our first ever wholeness seminar. Ellen and I did, and it was tons of people there. You guys can see Pam Cowart in the middle. She's Keith Cowart's wife from local church here. And anyways, just awesome. That was our first time doing that event. We launched Redeem. This is a fundraising event that we did with Jonathan. You can see him passionately sharing with his hand. We hosted another Revival on the River. We hosted, I think, 6 Revival on the Rivers pre-COVID. Ellen hosted a couple years worth of Bible studies for women, just going through, chapter by chapter through the scriptures. Redeem took out teams, a van or two of people going out and sharing the gospel with, women at the strip clubs and at motels. We raised money for a playground in Bradley Circle with a single Facebook post. God supernaturally gave us like 10 grand. Ellen just posted an idea. She's like, I think we should put a playground where the garden is. And I was like, great. You should post it on Facebook. She's like, okay. And she did. And like God just, all the money was there. We were like, okay, let's build a playground. We went back to Africa. We would preach the gospel and demons would manifest in the markets. People that were demonically possessed would literally start, we were casting out demons. It'd be like equivalent of going to the mall, starting to preach inside of the mall, and people start manifesting and slithering like snakes, and you're casting demons out of them. Like, that's basically what was happening in Africa. It was awesome. God bringing his kingdom. We did an event in Minneapolis. We traveled a bunch in 2017 to 2019. We launched Beautifully Made, which we're still doing to this day. So that was Jonathan's innovative idea, just creating business that's going to support ladies coming out of sex trafficking. This is a team in 2019. You guys see Linda. She's dead center. You see her? Yeah. 2019, we also had a vision dinner. How many of you guys remember that? That was a really special time. We went on a staff retreat. We'll do another one of these someday. I don't know when, maybe next year. But we went to the mountains and had a really, really special time together as a team. You could see 2019, our outreaches, and then 2020, the coffee shop. So we had a vision for years to start a coffee shop here at Take the City. And it just kind of was this dormant vision of like, one day we're going to do this. And a guy ended up, he knew that I had this idea, but he ended up calling me out of the blue and he said, hey, I want to take you to lunch. And I said, I like lunch, let's go. And so I went to go eat with them and he just says, listen, I know you want to do this idea. He said, I'll give you $40,000 to start your coffee shop if you'll do it. And I'll help you find someone that'll give you another 40. And I was like, that's a deal. Let's do this. So he ended up going to another person. 2 people funded the coffee shop. It actually cost us over $100,000 to launch the shop. And unfortunately, we launched it right before COVID, which is bad. But also, I'm glad we launched it before COVID hit because at least we got it up and running. And then over the COVID season, this is Jonathan and Jess. We did meal distribution. So we just gave out food. We just did whatever we could. Very awkward season for anyone in ministry. We did 10 America. We launched the House of Prayer in summer of 2020. And so that's when Brandon and Christina moved here and helped us to pioneer Harvest House of Prayer and also to do the 10 America event. And then you can see right here at the end of 2020, this is our team. You see baby Kai came into the picture. So now we're multiplying even into generations. So, and then also in 2020, another thing that I wanted to mention is we ended up stepping more into media. And so me and Bennett went and we made a movie called We Hear You, which is a documentary that we filmed around what happened with George Floyd. And so we followed some friends around and created a story. And anyways, that story reached well over 100,000 people within the first month, actually watched the film, and people still watch the film. Even now, people are still viewing the film. So that's it. I wanted to tell, some of the stories to you guys, again, of like where we've been. I wanted to, each picture, many of them represent like an altar for Take the City of like, wow, like God provided.